Welcome to Connecting the Community podcast. I am your host, Marge Andre. I will be connecting you to people, organizations, and events that create community. I am creating this podcast in Richmond Hill, an eclectic and very culturally diverse community with lots of trees and streams and interesting people, just up the hill from Toronto. On this podcast, I will be speaking with Marney Beck Robinson. Many people know Marney from her job at the Liberal newspaper, or her volunteer work, the Winter Carnival, or the food bank. She's taken on a new job with Elections Ontario for this upcoming provincial election. Welcome, Marney.
Thank you, Marge.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we have found the time to do this. I know you are super busy, but it's important that we tell everybody all about voting for this election. Okay, so now what is this job you have with Elections Ontario?
Okay, well, it's Public Engagement Liaison. That is what it stands for. And it's a part-time job.
Yeah.
And the main thing is to get out the vote. We're trying to encourage people to A, know there's an election on, and B, to get out and vote.
Okay. Important work to do. Now, have you done this with other elections? Is this the first time in this role?
This is first time in this role, and I think this might be a new role, actually, provincially, because I've never heard of it before. So I guess they think that maybe they can get more people to vote by having an engagement person. And what they want me to do is go out in the community and go to special events or coffee meetings and discussion places and just talk up the vote, remind people when it is and how to vote.
And how to vote. Okay, very good. I think you're a very good person for that. So good luck with everything for that. So really to summarize, your job is to not have people not vote because they couldn't figure out how to vote. Is that correct?
Well, yes, grammatically, as a former editor, I'd have to say two negatives make a positive. But yes, my job is to help people overcome any challenges that they might see to voting. If there's a language issue, maybe they've only been a Canadian citizen for 5 years and they feel concerned that their English isn't good enough, we can help with that. If they have handicaps, like if they're hard of hearing or if they're blind, we can accommodate that. But if people are going to be away on voting day, there's lots of ways you can vote beforehand. So we're trying to make it as easy and as many ways for people to vote as possible.
Okay, so people don't have the excuse that can't get out to vote. Okay.
Right.
And you are looking after just the Richmond Hill riding, not the North Aurora Oak Ridges Richmond Hill riding, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
But I'm finding many of the places that I've gone to already to do outreach, of course, like I was at Central Library Branch today, and of course, people come there from all over. Including from north of Elgin Mills Road, which is basically the divider line with Aurora Oak Ridges Richmond Hill. So I make sure to tell them, do you know which riding you're in first? Because that's very important. You wouldn't believe how many people come to one of the local election offices to vote and find out that they're in the wrong one.
And have the boundaries for this riding, Richmond Hill riding, changed? And is it called now the Richmond Hill South?
No, the boundaries haven't changed, and no, it's not called Richmond Hill South. You're thinking federal. There was some discussion of having a different, changing the name for federal, but provincially, we're still just Richmond Hill riding, and they changed. The last time they changed it was in 2018. So we haven't changed it since 2022's elections. It's the same riding boundaries.
I'm going to put a link into the podcast notes for where the maps are, because I think that's really important. Because can you tell us who is eligible to vote in this February 27th provincial election?
Okay, well, it's very simple. Number one, you have to be a Canadian citizen, you have to be a resident of Ontario, and you have to be 18 or older. Okay. That's the three criteria.
That's simple. Now, if your birthday is February 27th, you turn 18, can you vote?
Absolutely. And in
Oh,
fact, they'll make a big fuss over you. If you happen to come and vote on voting day on your birthday, they make a big loud announcement if the person's not too shy.
yeah.
And they say, oh, this person's just turned 18. This is their first vote, and everyone claps. It's very exciting.
Okay, it's very good. So permanent residents, even though they may have been here for a while, they pay taxes, they cannot vote, correct?
That's right. You have to be a Canadian citizen.
Okay. Now, how many eligible voters are there in this riding?
So in 2022, there are 85,000 approximately eligible voters, and we had a 36% voter turnout. And this year, or for this election, the approximate estimate is 114,000. So you can see we've grown quite a bit.
Wow.
And it
Yeah.
seems like a low number for the population of Richmond Hill, but of course, children under 18 or 17 and under can't vote. So, that takes out a big swath of the population.
Okay. Okay. So there are many ways to vote. You going to the polling station on Thursday, February 27th from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. is not your only option.
Right.
There may be some really good reasons why you can't do that. And you want to make sure that any unavailability doesn't stop any eligible voter from voting. So let's say that you were going on a 3-week cruise leaving this weekend. Uh, you have an office, so you could run up Saturday morning before you take off and vote, correct?
That is absolutely right. So even now, I'm speaking today. So our election office was opened last week, but one of the first things they do, they get the special ballots going and open, and people there. And we've already had voters come in because exactly what you say, they're going south, or they're going skiing, or they're going somewhere, and they want to vote before they leave. So the only wrinkle, or the only fly in the ointment, is we don't have all the candidates set yet. People can still become candidates up until the 12th. So right now we have what is called a write-in ballot. And it's just like what it sounds like. You write in the name of your candidate. So number one, you have to know who you're going to vote for. You can't turn up at our election office and say, where are the names? Or even worse, where are the parties? Because you've got to know the name of the person you want, and you write it in. We put it in the ballot box, and it's official just like any other time.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been at the office for a few hours for many days so far, and every day there's a few more people that come, and they have certain personal reasons for why they need to be away on a business trip, or they want to vote early, and we take them.
Very good. Okay. So let's say that you are a snowbird and you already are away and don't get back until March. Would you be able to vote?
Yes, you can. You can vote by mail. There's a whole, and I do want to say on this podcast that I am not the absolute expert on elections. I'm learning just like everyone else. I've worked at a few, but there's always new wrinkles or things that change. But here's what they say for voting by mail. So you apply online at votebymail.elections.on.ca, and you can download and print an application form, or you can pick up a form from our local election office. And then you have to get your application approved with one piece of ID. So you have to prove who you are. And once it's approved, you'll be mailed a voting kit with instructions for how to complete it and submit your ballot. And here's for your question, if you're outside of Canada, if you're outside of Canada, you're responsible for the international postage. So you've got to figure out the timing, of course, because mail is not instantaneous. So you've got to make sure you leave enough days for the mail to reach us. So you should go online and read all about it, and it talks about what kind of ID you need, but it is all possible to do.
I know someone who was in palliative care and she really wanted to vote. She only had a short time left to live. And I heard that someone came to her to allow her to vote. What is involved with, say, hospital or home visits?
Well, this is a subject that I can talk about because maybe it was me who came to her house. I've done we call them home visits, and I've done them for both provincial and federal. And so if someone really is in their end of days, or they really are maybe recently released from surgery and they literally can't get around, then they or someone in their family calls and asks for a home visit, and we schedule it according to when the staff is available and when the persons can take, if they're not having a doctor visit and whatever. And then we come to their home. We always go in groups of two because, we're going into people's homes or condos or whatever. So for security, and we handle it just like you would at a voting booth. It's secure. The first thing I tell people is, please don't tell me who you're going to vote for. I don't want to know. I'm going to give you a ballot. Well, it's surprising the number of people who want to tell you that.
Mhm.
But we hand them the ballot and we put up a privacy screen. Even if someone's lying in bed, we put up something so that we can't see what they're marking on their ballot. They put it in an envelope. They hand me the envelope. I bring it back to the office and we input it into the ballot system, just like it would be as if you were at one of the advanced poll days.
Now, there are 3 days for advance polls. Thursday, February 20th, Friday, February 21st, and Saturday, February 22nd. And
Correct.
they're open from 10 to 8. So
Right.
you can go to one of 3 community centers, Bayview Hill Community Center, Langstaff, and the Barrow Arena. So what is the setup at those advance polls locations?
Well, it's just the same as in voting and your regular voting day, but instead of one school where all your neighbors are, it takes in a wider group of people. So you would be pointed, if you say what area of Richmond Hill you live in, they'll point you, oh, you go over to that table and that tabulator will take give you your ballot and take your vote. So it's just the same procedure. It's just there's more people there, but there's also more election staff to serve you. So lots of times it's a quicker line, or it moves faster than it does on voting day.
Yeah, yeah. I started doing advanced polls, going to advanced polls during COVID, and I've continued to do it. I just find it's really quick and convenient. So encourage people to do that just in case there's a snowstorm on February 27th. So don't want to wish you
No.
any bad luck, but I think there's some good reasons to consider doing an advanced poll. Okay. So we've been talking about ways to vote that means that you do not go to the polling station on the official voting day. So
Right.
how is someone prevented from voting twice? Say I got back from Florida earlier, I had mailed in my ballot, but what prevents me from going to the polling station and voting again on voting day?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm sure more people wonder that too. But it's a simple process of it on paper. If you're at a ballot where you don't have a computer tabulator, it's literally called striking off. And a poll worker will get your name and address. You show them your ID or your voter information card, and they will literally take a ruler, find you in their great big voters list of all of Richmond Hill, and strike your name off. So if you tried to vote again, they will say, but we have a record here, you've already voted, and they won't let you.
Okay, so there are assurances, there's some
Absolutely.
ways to make it,
It's
okay.
called striking you off the voters list. So once you've voted, you cannot vote again.
Okay, thank you for that. So how and when are the mail-in ballots, ballots collected from home visits and, the people that go to your offices, how are they actually physically counted? And what happens to all these ballots?
Well, everything's computerized nowadays, as you can imagine. So
Okay.
you do fill out a paper ballot, but it is inserted in a machine, and the machine literally keeps it in there. And it's locked. I mean, election workers can't get into it, no one can. And so the advanced polls, that all is in, those are done by a machine. So tabulator, they're called. And the vote, literally the numbers and the person they voted for, that's all stays in the machine. And then on election night, the poll workers responsible for advance poll will sit in a room and they'll press the button and they'll press the results from that tabulator machine from advance poll, say from the Barrow Arena. And then that's added to the full vote from voting night. So I think you wondered about, do you have very quick results? Well, not necessarily, because there's still people in smaller condos or in large condos where they're doing it on paper, and those people have to count everything, put it in secure box, drive to the polling office, and then we all hand in our results. So it does take a few hours. So that's why sometimes we don't know results until midnight.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about. Okay, so most people will be sent a voter information card,
Right?
and that says where you go to where the polling station is, and you just take that to go and vote, and it can be quite quick. Do you need other identification with this voter information card?
Yes, well, here's how it works. If you have the voter card, then we know that you're already in the system because the system has mailed you it out. So they already know your name and address. You just have to show one piece of ID with your name to
Okay.
make sure that I'm Marney, not voting as Marge Andre.
Yeah.
So, but that one, just anything with your name on it, official ID. And if you don't get your voter information card in the mail, then all you need is one piece of ID that has your name and address. So, for example, if you don't get your voter information card, you can't use your health card to show the poll worker because it doesn't have your address. So it shows you're an Ontario resident, but it doesn't show where you live. So you have to be able to show them something. But it's a huge list of things, like they'll take utility bills and, student cards if you have your name on it in a photo. There's lots of different things you can use as government ID.
Okay. So what would happen if you just moved, say, last month?
One of what good Ontarians do is they go to the Service Ontario location and get a change of address for their license, right? So if you've done that within a few weeks of moving, you should have either the temporary one or your new license showing what your new address is. And that's what you would show a poll worker. This is my new address. So usually there's something, and say you don't have that, but you have a utility bill because you've just hooked up gas or your Vibe TV. So long as you can show this is my new address, that's fine.
If you just became a new Canadian citizen, do you automatically get put on the voters list?
Well, not exactly, because we're talking provincial and federal, and they don't necessarily speak to each other. Of course, Canadian citizenship is an arm of the federal government, and not necessarily will that information reach the Ontario voters list. But believe me, I have seen people come to vote literally holding on to their Canadian citizenship papers, very proudly showing it to poll workers that they just became a Canadian citizen and they're happy and excited to vote. And those are also people we make a big deal of. We really congratulate them and clap for them and make them feel excited because we're excited too.
Okay.
So that's how that works.
That's how that works. Okay.
Yeah.
Another question for you. Everything's fed into the tabulators. Your polling stations are closed at 9 o'clock. And then what happens?
So each deputy poll, somebody who oversees the poll, they will have in their car the tabulators, and they have to drive to our election headquarters, our returning office, because the returning officer has to oversee all this, make sure that everything's followed to the T. So we all have to drive to the southeast corner of Richmond Hill, where our election office is right now. And so, there's traffic. If it's snowing, I hope you're wrong, Marge, but, if it's snowing, it could take people 20 minutes even to drive from one end of the northwest corner to the southeast corner. So, it takes a while. And then there's a huge lineup of all poll workers who want to hand in their stuff and their tabulator machine. So it's a little chaotic, but it's organized chaos. Trust me.
okay. So don't expect results by 9:15.
No.
No. Okay. Okay. So another question. Are there restriction on the candidates or their team being at polling stations?
Yes, there are. We don't ever want too many people overwhelming the poll workers. So we are happy to let representatives of every candidate monitor the voting, but they're only allowed to have one person representing each candidate. So if I'm at Elgin Barrow Arena on the first day of the advanced poll, and there's, say, 4 candidates, there should be only 4 scrutineers allowed there.
Okay. Right. Okay. So you're not going to be cheerleaded, please vote for me on the
No,
way in the poll. Okay. Got
no.
that. Okay. I have always wondered what happens to all these ballots. Are they kept in a secret place for a certain amount of time?
They are very definitely locked up. So once the advanced poll's done, right, on the 22nd, there will be all these tabulators with votes inside them, and they are locked in a special room inside our election office, our returning office, which of course is locked when there's no people in it. And then, as I said, on voting night after 9 o'clock, then all the results are spit out of each of those machines. So they definitely are locked up. And then you'll know every time we have an election, there's unofficial results and official results. So the unofficial is what is quickly done on election night when everyone's waiting for results. But they go through and count them all again. So they will match your vote and my vote and check it off that, okay, did Marge vote? Did Marney vote? And they'll check every single vote and make sure the numbers line up again. So
Wow.
and after that, I honestly don't know what they do with them, but
Okay.
they're kept for quite a few days after the actual election.
Whoa. Okay. That sounds like a lot of work because,
It is
potentially there could be 100,000 different vote of these things. Probably not, but yeah.
Well, we wish there were.
Yeah.
And I'll remind you, I think it was a federal vote, I'm pretty sure. But there was one vote in the Richmond Hill riding that the 2 candidates were separated by 12 votes on the
Yeah.
first night. And so they had to do an official recount. Now, that's a whole different kettle of fish, but they do recount. So that's another reason they keep the ballots, just in case they have to do a recount.
Mm-hmm. Day after election, February 28th. Are you unemployed?
Probably not, because they usually need a few election workers available to do just the kind of thing I was talking about, the
Okay.
checking and the cross-checking. So often they'll canvass all the election workers and say, who can come in tomorrow and the
Mm-hmm.
next day? So there's usually a cleanup crew, a group of people who stick around and help clean everything up, because all the election tabulator machines have to be sent back to elections Ontario, and there's a lot of all the phones have to be packed up. We just rent space for this 4 weeks. So the whole office has to be taken down and
Yeah.
deconstructed.
Are there any job opportunities like for voting day? Do you need people to uh, sign up for that, or is a lot of people
Absolutely.
already jumped?
Yes, we definitely need people always, because we even need, when you think of an actual voting day and there's lots of different polls, we need so many people even just to work for one day. And
Mm-hmm.
some of them are high stress jobs, but there's also jobs that's called information officer. And you literally stand at the door and you direct people, you encourage them, have your ID ready. And, are you sure you live in this riding? Things like that. So there's some lower key jobs as well. But we definitely need people, and we will need people right up until the day before February 27th, because things happen. One of our election workers, her brother just died. So, I mean, she suddenly has to go to a funeral. So, things happen.
Yeah.
People get sick, people get the flu, right? So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm crossing my fingers as I say that, but
Yeah. Okay. So
life happens.
yeah, I'll put the link in there because I saw on the Elections Ontario there were this option if you're interested in working, do that. So I'll maybe I can find a few more people to help you out on the day of. Is there
Sure.
anything else that you like to add?
Well, we were talking about advanced polls, and I think maybe you were wondering if more people are going to the advanced polls
Mm.
versus the way things used to be. And I can tell you because I looked up the stats. So in 2018's provincial vote, we had about 700,000 people cast their ballot in the advanced polls, and that was 7% of the eligible voters. And then in 2022, we had 1 million people who did cast their ballots early in the advance poll, which is 10% of eligible voters. So you can see that, didn't research further back, but I believe that every election, more and more people do just like what you say, get it done early, smaller lineups, go to the advance polls. So
okay. Yeah.
I encourage people to do that.
Yes. Okay. No, just curious. And those are interesting trends. And you said 10% of eligible voters. So we only have 40% of the people voting. That is actually really a significant number of people who use advanced polls. So that is interesting. Well, I certainly wish you well with.
Thank you.
I do end the podcast asking the same question of all guests. And I think I asked you this once when we were talking about the Winter Carnival, but I don't remember your answer. So I'm asking again. I'd like you to name one thing you really like about this community.
Well, I do remember my answer last time, and I said the green space in this community, and I still love that. But I will say something that should really resonate for you too, because what I love these days is the interconnected organizations of Richmond Hill. There are so many good people involved in so many good causes and civic events. You just keep running into the same good people all the time, and I love it. It's just great. So
Yeah.
that's my current favorite thing.
Okay, interconnectedness. I really do like that. So yeah.
I figured you would.
Okay. So I've got a lot of links that I'm going to put in the podcast notes for how to contact you, how the elections in Ontario, how to apply for a job. And we're going to see if we can get a really good number of people, a high percentage of people out voting. So it is important. So thank you, Marney, for taking the time to do this podcast.
You're very welcome. And if we get a few more voters out or hundreds more, I'd be very happy.
Okay, very good. Thank you for listening. I would very much appreciate you sharing this podcast. Consider emailing me at Marj, M-A-R-J, at marjandre.com. I welcome suggestions for podcast guests. Stay well, stay connected.